A big thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this week's video. If you need a website or a domain, go to squarespace.com/James for 10% off your first purchase. Hello everybody, how's it going? Hope you're all well. Welcome back to the channel. I think the nicest comments I've ever had on this channel say something to the effect of, James, I could listen to you talking about anything. And there haven't been many of those, but there have been a few over the years, which is a lovely thing to read about yourself. Today, though, we're going to find out if those commenters were lying. Mum. Because a few weeks ago, I asked the fine people on Instagram for some questions, and I got loads of questions. I can't answer them all, but I'm going to answer a few of them today. And even though it's just a few, I think this probably will be quite a long video. So strap in, or feel free to leave. You can leave if this does get boring. When this gets boring. Favourite camera accessory? Do you know what? I would say it's actually a non-accessory. Which doesn't make any sense. Last year, I went to Vietnam with Roman and Jord Hammond, and I noticed that Jord wasn't using a camera strap, which at the time I thought was a bit crazy. But then I was in Oman earlier this year with him as well, and I paid a bit more attention to sort of how he was interacting with his camera. And long story short, I've been intrigued enough to eventually try it. In the last couple of weeks, I've not had a strap on my camera. And I found it, maybe revolutionary is a bit strong, but really, really interesting. And I mean, it is a bit mad. Cameras are very expensive. A strap doesn't hurt. But there's something about holding your camera and having to hold your camera that sort of keeps your camera front of mind. And therefore, photo opportunities front of mind. Like, you don't tend to switch off, or I don't tend to switch off when this is in my hand and I'm walking around, because I'm very conscious that I'm holding it and that I have to hold it, and therefore that I should be shooting. Maybe I'm just in a honeymoon period and it helps that I haven't dropped it yet. Favourite conditions to shoot in? I would say the couple of hours after golden hour in the morning and the couple of hours before golden hour in the evening. I'm, I suppose, when did that happen? I am what you'd call like a subject-driven photographer. Like, I go out in autumn, as I have the last couple of weeks, and for the first couple of days of that, I shoot trees. And then I remember after a couple of days that I'm not massively into the idea of photographing trees. So then I look for subjects, and I want the trees as my sort of decoration. Much the same with light. I want light to sort of decorate my subject rather than to be the subject. Same with things like northern lights. But the problem with golden hour, and often I find the problem with autumn and the problem with things like northern lights, is that those things can sort of take over and sort of steal the show from your subject. I imagine it's kind of like an extra on a movie who is way too eager to please and clearly wants lines. In the end, they would just get annoying because they're getting in the way, and you'd sort of do away with them. That's kind of how I feel about golden hour and autumn and things like that. They're very, very beautiful, undeniably beautiful, but because of that, they get in the way of your subject. That's a long answer, but yeah, basically bright, sunny days just outside of golden hour I find to be the sweet spot. Favourite country to shoot in? That's an easy one. Britain. I'm biased, massively biased, because I'm British. But I think this is definitely the best country to take photos in, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I travel a lot, and there are still more countries I haven't been to than countries I have. But of all the places I've been, Britain remains my favourite place to shoot. I shall read an extract from one of my favourite books by Bill Bryson, Notes from a Small Island, about Britain, which I think sums it up pretty well. It sometimes occurs to me that the British have more heritage than is good for them. In a country where there is so astonishingly much of everything, it's easy to look on it as a kind of inexhaustible resource. Consider the numbers: 445,000 listed buildings, 12,000 medieval churches, 1.5 million acres of common land, 120,000 miles of footpaths and public rights of way, 600,000 known sites of archaeological interest, 98% of them with no legal protection. Do you know that in my Yorkshire village alone, there are more 17th century buildings than in the whole of North America? To me, yeah, that kind of sums up my love of the UK. And British people, myself included, are incredibly pessimistic and incredibly sort of dismissive of the UK in lots of ways. And we portray it as this sort of grim place often. And I think sometimes that leads to a perception that's not actually true. I mean, it does rain in Britain quite often, but it rains an awful lot more in Sydney than it does in London, for example. And it can be really advantageous to live here for shooting versus visiting, because you do need the weather to play ball, and often it's not kind of perfect photography conditions in Britain, particularly in places like this, North Wales. We're on the west coast here, close to mountains, and I do live very close to the coast, and I like to shoot close to the coast. That means that the weather is, I mean, you can look at the forecast, but it will be wrong. Outside of wind speed, the forecast is normally wrong. But when the weather's good, there is nowhere else I'd rather be to shoot. There is so much here in a relatively small island. And I don't know, like a lot of places, our politics at the moment is a mess. And there's lots wrong with this country. But photographically, I think it's amazing. Do you like risotto? Thank you. Nobody ever asks me if I like risotto. I do like risotto. I love risotto, in fact. There are maniacs out there, though, who will, for example, cook with both bacon and salted butter. Which, I mean, you're playing with fire if you're doing that. I assume they're the sorts of people who also play with electrics in the bath. Crazy. But if you can keep salt levels under control, risotto, absolutely, love it. I mean, I never order it. Get a burger or a steak or something. But I do like risotto, yes. Worst ever purchase to do with photography? Probably the Leica Q3 43. I tried the Leica Q2. I didn't really get on with it. I tried the Leica Q3. I had a lot of shortcomings with that. But when the 43 came out, I thought, well, that focal length, I mean, that camera's made for me. And I sort of thought that that lens would make up for all the problems that I found for my personal shooting with the body. It didn't. No, didn't like it at all. Have you made over $1 million as a photographer yet? I get asked lots of questions about money and about structuring a business like this and about how to find clients, about how to put together brand deals, about licensing imaging, about selling prints, about publishing books. I get lots of these kinds of questions. And about this time last year, actually, I put together a video where I went through everything. All of my... Sorry, there's a fly in here. Where was I? Yes, I went through all of my revenue streams, the lot, figures, everything. And I was about to release it, and I felt uncomfortable releasing it because I'm British, and we're sort of brought up to be allergic to talking about money, really, and to think that it's quite sort of vulgar. But I was about to put it out, and I thought, who is this actually helping? Because the sorts of people that really want to know this information will be motivated to go out and find it. I mean, all this stuff that I've learned through publicly available information and through making contacts and talking to those contacts and asking them to sort of teach me things. That's something that anyone with the motivation to do it can do. And so the people I'm really talking to in that video are people who haven't gone out to do that or have no interest in going out to learn all those things. And so really what I'm doing is just sharing my finances with people who haven't asked me about my finances or who don't really benefit from knowing about my finances. Or basically, I didn't publish the video. It all felt a bit strange. And yeah, what I would say is this: if you can learn all that stuff, and if you can build an audience and learn to at least try to give and offer more value to that audience than you're asking for in return, and to make sure that you're not asking for people to like and subscribe every 3 seconds. If you can do that, and you can end up with an audience of many, many thousands of people who all actively choose to give up a bit of their free time to follow whatever it is that you're doing, that has value. Lots and lots of value. And I feel very fortunate at the moment to make a really good living. But I'm also aware that it could go away like that. People could get sick of me. I could run out of things to talk about. There are lots of ways it could end. But I think everyone has a shelf life. And there's that quote in The Office, isn't there? Is it Andy that says it? It's something to the effect of, if only there was a way to know when the good old days in your life are. And sometimes I try and remember that these are probably the good old days in my life. Like, I'm doing exactly what I want to do for work. I feel very, very fortunate in that regard. I make a good living. I've got young kids in the house, which is challenging, but also amazing. Yeah. That's a long, long way of not answering the question, but hopefully it helps in some way. How do you balance parenting and being self-employed? I think any time you have multiple priorities in your life, it's really tricky, because typically they're drawing on the same resource, which is your time. And I've definitely got myself into habits in the past where when I'm at home, really I just want to be working because I love being out photographing stuff. And when I'm out photographing stuff, or when I'm away, wherever, I just want to be home, playing with the kids and seeing them. And for a while, a year or two ago, maybe even more recently than that actually, I realised that I was just basically miserable the whole time because the grass was always greener. I always wanted to be where I wasn't. And then eventually I realised that I had all this stuff that I loved in my life, and that if I was able to just sort of stay present, my life would feel much better rather than constantly wishing I was doing the other. And that's been helpful. It's also been helpful to realise that I can't be anywhere near as good a photographer or a parent as I would like to be anymore, because my time is completely split. But that is preferable to only having one of those things. So that's been helpful too. I don't know if that answer's helpful, but I'm finally getting to grips with it. I've been a parent for 4.5 years now. Less than that, 4 and a bit years. And I feel like I'm finally getting to grips with the complications that adds to your life. And a 4-year-old is much, much nicer than a 2-year-old in every way. Arthur's 6 months today, so we've got it all to come again. Favourite item of clothing to wear out shooting? I bought this jacket in the summer sales, got an absolute steal. It's from Rab, but what I like is that the logo is already blacked out, and as you know, I enjoy a hidden logo, and it's the coziest thing I've ever bought. And I'm excited to wear it, but it's been too warm in the UK so far, so I'm waiting for the darkness of winter. It's overkill, to be honest, for any time that you're walking in the UK, mostly. But I kind of bought it for the times where I'm just stood around waiting for scenes and light to unfold. So, looking forward to wearing it. I'm going to Antarctica in a couple of months as well for our next workshop, so looking forward to wearing this there. I mean, I'm looking forward to that trip, full stop, but mostly I'm looking forward to wearing this jacket because it's so cozy. I'm going to keep it on for a bit actually. Tips for becoming a content creator. Don't, and this is just my opinion, don't use the term content creator. I think that's like a chef calling themselves a calorie provider. This might just be me, but it makes me think of somebody who is making stuff for reasons other than just making it. And so it sort of makes me wince a bit. It turns me off that person or that person's work. Again, that could just be me, but you asked for a tip from me, and that's my tip. Don't like that term. Do you think of yourself as a professional photographer or a YouTuber? It's a good question. When I'm introducing myself to people, if people ask what I do, for instance, honestly, it depends how long I've got. If I don't have very long, I'm more likely to call myself a photographer because people, I mean, they might feign interest a little bit. They might say, oh, what sort of photography? But generally speaking, that's it. If you call yourself a YouTuber, people tend to light up and have lots and lots of questions. particularly if they've heard of Mr. Beast. And I suppose technically, sorry, it's getting a bit hot now. I suppose technically speaking, I probably make more money from photography than I do from YouTube. In fact, I definitely do. But that's complicated, that relationship, because a lot of the money I make from photography in my current business model, I only really make because I have a YouTube channel. Like, I sell many more prints and books than I would if I didn't have a YouTube channel. So it's a bit of a strange relationship, I guess. Also, when I think of professional photographers, I think of like wedding photographers, or I think of the guy who took Noah's school portrait the other week. I think of people basically who are commissioned to take specific photos, and then they invoice for those photos. And I don't really do that at the moment. I go out and take the photos I want to take, and I feel very fortunate that I can make a living in that way. But it doesn't make me feel like a professional photographer as I used to feel when I was sort of doing commissioned work. Also, I used to sort of shy away from the term YouTuber. It used to make me feel like I was a 15-year-old in my bedroom making little YouTube videos. When in actual fact, I'm a 36-year-old in my bedroom making little YouTube videos. And there's a big difference. The reality, though, I think, of being called a YouTuber is that in order for that to be accurate and plausible, you need quite a number of people paying attention to what you're making. And the more I've thought about it over the years, the more I've realised, I mean, what a privilege that is, that people take their, in many cases, very limited free time and spend it on things that you're working on. So I've started to actually feel really quite proud if people describe me as a YouTuber. And I don't really mind what people call me, photographer, YouTuber, doesn't really matter. But yeah, I definitely get a kick of pride out of thinking, yeah, I'm a YouTuber. That's a really nice thing. How do you find interesting photos in seemingly ordinary or boring places? The thing about ordinary is that it suggests a lack of novelty by definition. And novelty is incredibly personal to your experiences. For example, you could shoot in your town, wherever that might be, let's say here in the Western world somewhere, and to somebody who is in Cambodia, it will look incredibly novel and therefore not ordinary. And to them, it will be super interesting. And I suppose that's what I try and think about when I'm shooting in a place that I'm really familiar with and that doesn't feel new and exciting to me. I try and get myself out of my own head and look at the photos from someone else's perspective. I mean, I'm shooting for me, and it's really important that I shoot for me, I think. But at the same time, I'm trying to imagine the photos from other people's perspectives. And I find that quite a helpful tool in reframing the idea that, yeah, I'm shooting in the same old place over and over. Because actually, I still think that has value to other people, if not to you. How do you stay motivated in photography? Well, I suppose the elephant in the room for me, at least, is that it pays my bills. So that's a pretty good motivation. I would say me and people like me on YouTube maybe do photography a bit of a disservice sometimes because we show it as like a primary activity. You know, I go out and take photos and I make a video about the fact that I'm out to take photos. I think the reality for me and lots of other people, particularly if you don't do it as a job actually, is that photography often works best as a secondary activity. And what I mean by that is that if you're going out for a walk or a bike ride, or if you're going out with your kids, or you're going to the supermarket to buy food, whatever you might be up to, if you take a camera with you, you might see photo opportunities. But if you don't, it's not the end of the world because you probably didn't have high expectations of photo opportunities. I think the problem with motivation comes when your expectations are consistently not met. And I think when you're going out to try and take good photos, that's going to happen a lot. Chances are you're not going to get good photos or photos that are going to make your portfolio because, I mean, it's rare that conditions, your location, things unfolding in a scene in front of you all combine to make something that's really, really special. So keeping expectations low, basically, I think is the best way to deal with motivation. and stopping when you're having fun as well. I don't try and spend hours and hours out taking photos and turn it into a chore. I like to shoot for 2 or 3 hours, and if I'm enjoying myself, I try and sort of bring it to an end while I'm still enjoying it. And that means that I'm wanting to go out again soon, because my memory is of enjoying taking photos. Is it too late to start a YouTube channel? It depends, I would say. When I started my channel in 2016, the very death of 2016, I remember while I was setting up the channel watching lots of videos with titles like, "Is 2016 too late to start YouTube?" In other words, this idea of saturation has been around for the best part of a decade. And I remember watching those videos and lots of people in them concluding that, yeah, it probably is too late to start a YouTube channel. And I'm really pleased I didn't listen to them. So I think saturation is maybe to an extent a thing. For example, if you want to start a photography channel where the first 2 minutes of your video are you walking through gates on your way to a scene in the Lake District for a sunrise shoot, I think it's going to be a struggle because lots and lots of people have got there ahead of you. Having said that, if you can look around the YouTube space and you think to yourself, do you know what I want to do, nobody else is doing, and I think it will be of value and interest to people, then definitely give it a go. But I think there are a couple of things to keep in mind with YouTube. The first is that I think you need to be really willing to be honest with yourself. I think it's very tempting on YouTube, for example, if you have a video do really, really well, it's really tempting and understandable to give yourself a big pat on the back and say, yeah, I've made a video there that people find of interest or valuable. Well done, me. And then in the same breath, if you have a video that doesn't do very well, to say, oh, the algorithm's not helping me out. YouTube's got a vendetta against me and my little channel. You can't have it both ways. And it's been really helpful for me to have the understanding that the reason I don't get double the views I get now, or triple the views, however many multiples, it's because my videos aren't good enough. They're not interesting enough to enough people. And I think if you're willing to be that honest with yourself, I think it stands you in good stead for trying to improve and trying to always have a handle on what it is that people actually want. The other thing I would say is that often people say that YouTube is a really good platform for marketing other stuff that you might be doing. So in the photography space, people might think that YouTube is a really good way to try and encourage people to sign up to workshops or to buy more prints. And I can confirm that YouTube is a really useful marketing tool. It absolutely is. But I think you've got to keep in mind that most marketing material that's made in the world is really ineffective. Like the reason that you can remember a few very good adverts is probably because there are so few of them. And the reason that there are so few of them is because the vast majority of marketing material is made by people who have to make it rather than people who want to make it. So it's been my observation, I would say, that YouTube is a brilliant marketing tool, but in order for it to work as a marketing tool, it's best for you not to need it as a marketing tool. And that probably sounds a bit strange because it's a big part of my living, but if I'd started it because I wanted it to be a big part of my living, I don't think it would have worked, because on YouTube you're sort of, if you're making videos for reasons other than wanting to make videos, ultimately you're competing with people who really, really do want to make videos, and that's the main reason they're doing it. And those people are always going to be difficult to beat because they're not after anything else other than just making the videos. I'm waffling now, but I don't know if that's useful. Do you ever not take a picture just to appreciate the moment? What I do need to do definitely is if I'm in front of an unbelievable scene, rather than taking 3,000 photos and just shooting for the whole experience, it would be better if I took 3 photos and then just enjoyed it. And I rarely do that. I often try and maximize the photos. And then I don't even really enjoy the photos because I don't remember the specific moment I pressed the shutter because there are 3,000 of them. So yeah, I think it'd be better to take fewer photos, still get the moment, but then also enjoy the moment. And I definitely don't do that at the moment. Oh, we can talk about 43 again. Does the 43mm focal length feel restricting? I think any one focal length feels restricting, and I think that's the beauty of it. You know, if you're photographing somewhere and you don't have all the options available to you in terms of focal lengths, you need to get creative and you need to work your scene. And I think doing that, A, is often more fun, and B, definitely makes you a better photographer. So yes, it's definitely restricting, but that's kind of the point. What's your rating system for photos? I import everything into Lightroom, then I rate anything that I'm compelled to edit. All of those photos that are rated then go into a folder that's named by year, and then those folders, the year folders, they get backed up everywhere, and everything that's not been edited gets backed up in some places, but not as many. I don't delete anything because I've gone back too many times into the archives and found gems. So I'm terrified to delete anything. Ambulance. What do you love most about photography? Probably the fact that you can't complete it. If you get into Rubik's Cubes, sooner or later you're probably going to solve it and think, well, what do I do now? That doesn't really happen with photography. You can always improve or get better photos, or, as I say, there's always something around the corner. That's what I love most, I think. When will you come to Pakistan? I would love to come to Pakistan. I have a bit of a strange relationship with travel at the moment, I would say. On the one hand, I really just want to be at home, both personally and also to really get to know it intimately for photography. And then on the other hand, I really want to explore as well. Asia is definitely the continent that I'm most drawn to at the moment. I was talking about flow in the last video, and anytime I've shot anywhere in Asia, that's when I feel in flow the most. It's quite hard often to work there, but as a consequence, you're always engaged. Whereas if I go to Italy to shoot, it's all a bit easy. You can sort of roll out of bed into glorious light, shoot for a couple of hours in perfect temperatures, go and get a cappuccino, carry on shooting, get a lovely pizza. It's all very easy. Sometimes in some parts of Asia that I've travelled in, it's not quite that straightforward. And for that, I really like it. So yes, Pakistan is definitely on the list. When are you getting a campervan? I don't think I am getting a campervan. No. I know it's very popular, and I understand why people do, but given that I don't like to shoot in golden hour, and that I don't need to be in a photography spot at the break of dawn or to the very last of the light at night, there's not much advantage in me having a campervan. And I've spent probably 3 or 4 months of my life sleeping in campervans. I've got nothing against them, but for the money they cost, I just prefer to spend it on hotels. I like hotels. Best time of year to visit Wales, I would say May or June. That's typically when the weather's at its best, but also it's not July and August where everything is just way too overcrowded. Definitely avoid July and August if you can. It's mad. What has brought you joy of late? That's nice. A friend of mine bought Noah a little camera. See if I can find it actually. Little dinosaur camera. Basically you can shoot with it and then it prints stuff out immediately. A bit like an Instax, but a little kid's version that doesn't cost £1 every time you print something. And yeah, basically seeing Noah take photos of Arthur with this and enjoy it has been really nice. That's a nice question. That might be a nice place to end, unless there are others. Let's have a look. How long are we going now? Okay, definitely time to wrap up. Thank you for watching. I hope that was helpful. Who knows? Hi, Mum. It's probably only you left. Yes, thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. And a giant thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. If, like me, you're a photographer and you want somewhere to showcase your work online, I couldn't recommend Squarespace enough. I've used it for 7 or 8 years now. It's where I host my portfolio. It's where I send newsletters from. It's where I sell my books, my presets, my prints. And I can do all of that without knowing a single line of code. I'm not technically minded at all. and yet it's the nucleus of my business, and I find it very, very simple to use. The good news is that if you're looking for a website of your own where you can show your images exactly how you want people to see them, then you can check out Squarespace for free by starting a free trial by going to squarespace.com. After that, if you'd like to make a purchase, just go to squarespace.com/James and you'll get 10% off that purchase. So a massive thank you to Squarespace for their continued support. And yeah, I'll see you next time when the video will not be this long. And well, hopefully we'll be outdoors. But the weather has been awful recently. So I don't know